Welcome to another edition of Papa's Perspective. I'm Bob Papa, brought to you by Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store and a mattress partner of the New York Giants as the 100 seasons of Giants football celebration continues. The Giants kicking off 100 seasons. Who better to have on than the president and CEO, co-owner of the New York Football Giants, Mr. John Mara. And John, this is an exciting week for the Giants as season 100 kicks off. What's the feeling like for your family knowing this celebration has been so well received?
I think it's been a great celebration so far, and we are very pleased that it has been well received by our fans and by the media. And we're looking forward to this season. I think we're all excited about it, a little nervous because we want to make sure that the 100th season, you'd like it to be a successful one. You like every season to be successful, but particularly this one. A lot of history behind those 100 years, and something that we're excited about.
The night with legends at Madison Square Garden kind of kicked everything off, and the outpouring of support from the former players was pretty fun to watch. As far as the excitement level they had to be a part of that.
That was great. That was, to me, was the best part of that night, was seeing all those guys, seeing how much they were enjoying themselves, and seeing how important it was to them to feel like they were, part of Giants history. And that, to me, was the best part of the night. And we'll be doing a lot of other things this year, bringing a lot of alumni players back. And I think that'll be a great thing for the fans to see and for us to experience as well.
In the Free Fan Fest on Friday night leading up to the game on Sunday, and family members of the deceased, living top 100 players all assembled in one place has to make the Mara family feel very proud, since this has been the family business since day one.
It has been the family business since 1925, and my family's been around for that entire period that these guys played in. And I remember almost all of them back from when I was a kid and everything. So being able to see them again, and those that have passed away, being able to see their families and allow them to be a part of this celebration, I think is particularly meaningful to us.
And the list had such a wonderful blend of the past as well as more contemporary players. And the fact that a Roosevelt Brown finished number 2 in the voting by the Blue Ribbon panel, and you had Frank Gifford in that top 10, and Andy Robustelli and Emlyn Tunnell, really speaks to the rich tradition of this franchise, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that panel did a great job with that. And one of the things you get concerned about is that maybe the old-time players kind of get left out, and that was not the case here. And Roosevelt Brown and Emlyn Tunnell in particular, 2 of the greatest players we ever had. But they played a long time ago, and people tend to forget that. But I was particularly pleased to see both of them on that list, and particularly where they finished.
Yeah, Eli is first eligible for the Hall of Fame, but everybody else in the top 10 are members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So not only were they great Giants, but these are players that have been recognized as some of the greatest players in the history of the sport.
Yes, and some of them went in, the first year they were eligible. And Emlyn Tunnell was the first African-American ever inducted into the Hall of Fame. And Roosevelt Brown was considered one of the best tackles, if not the best tackle, of his era. And so it's great to see that they finished so high on the list. And as I said, I think the panel, you included, really did an outstanding job.
I want to talk a little bit about the history now. Obviously, the Giants were born in 1925. It was tough making a go of it. What were some of the things that you learned from your father as far as the motivation to move to Yankee Stadium in 1956, where the Giants in that first year wind up winning a championship?
Yeah, I think during that era, the Polo Grounds had started to decay a little bit, and Yankee Stadium was bigger, had more of a capacity, and I think the feeling was if we moved over there, it would allow more fans to see the game. We'd have a bigger attendance, and it was a better facility at the time. Polo Grounds certainly had a lot of history, and it was sad to see it torn down, but Yankee Stadium just provided a better opportunity at the time. We had some great years there and a lot of history at Yankee Stadium. And that was a big part of my childhood, was being around the team in practices and in games at Yankee Stadium.
It's got to be, there must have been an incredible energy, because not only are the Giants winning a championship in 56 and then having championship caliber teams in 58 and 59 in the early 60s, but it was also running concurrently to some of the greatest Yankee teams of all time.
Yeah, you're right. And, the Mickey Mantle era. And we shared that locker room with the Yankees, and that was a big thrill for me as a kid, was walking into that locker room and seeing Mickey Mantle's locker, Whitey Ford's locker, Elston Howard, all the Yogi Berra, all the great Yankees of that era. So it was a really cool thing for us to share that locker room, share that stadium, and be a part of that history.
Do you remember your first game?
I know I went to games probably starting around 1960, 61. I can remember some games in the 61 season. The first game that I really have a vivid memory of, though, was the 1962 championship game against the Green Bay Packers. It was one of the coldest days ever. My mother and I sat in an auxiliary press box in the corner of the end zone because it had some heat in it. And I sat next to Elston Howard. And I think I paid more attention to him than I did to the game. We ended up losing the game. I remember my mother being very sad afterwards. But that's the first game that I really can remember specific plays from, was that 62 season. And
Elston Howard, the former Yankee great, wore number 32, his number retired by the Yankees. Your favorite player? As a little kid, we all have one guy. For me, it was Bob Tucker and then Brad Van Pelt on the defensive side. Was there one guy as a kid that you just were in awe with?
I mean, I think for me, when I was very young, it was Frank Gifford. He was the star player on that team. There were a lot of stars, but he had that kind of personality that people just gravitated towards him. And I think everybody, including me, wanted to be like Frank Gifford. Then maybe in later years, you had a Spider Lockhart, who was just such a friendly, outgoing personality. As a kid, I really took to that. And, I'd go by his dorm room and at Fairfield University, I'd hang out with him for a while. And so he was a favorite of mine. Tucker Frederickson, another one, and so many in that era. But those are the guys that really come to mind for me. Brad Van Pelt, certainly in later years, I used to hang out with him quite a bit. He came to us as a rookie, and if you remember, the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team was trying to sign him. And so we got into kind of a bidding war with them. He ended up coming to us. And I think because he signed for what at the time was really a lot of money for a rookie, he was resented by a lot of the veterans that we had in that era. So he ended up hanging out with, the ball boys. And I was one of them. And he was just such a great guy, and he ended up being a great player for us as well. And eventually he was accepted as one of the boys and as one of our best players.
Obviously, you're not with the organization at this time, but we go through the late 60s and into the 70s, and the winning was few and far between. Can you sort of describe what it was like for your family to see your father in 1986 be handed that Super Bowl trophy by Brent Musburger in that ceremony, and the commissioner, obviously, Pete Rozelle, to finally come full circle, and it being 30 years since the last championship?
Yeah, I have to say in my lifetime that if you ask me what the greatest moment was, that probably would be it, because we had gone through such brutal years in the 1970s, and he had taken a lot of criticism from people. My father became this revered figure later on in life, but people forget that when we first moved into Giant Stadium, I can remember a game where he was being hung in effigy from the upper deck of the stadium. So that was pretty tough as a young person to see that, and for him to have to see that. So to finally get to that point in Pasadena in the Rose Bowl and being in that cramped locker room and see him up on the platform accepting that trophy, that was a moment I'll certainly never forget.
And then in 1990, doing it again. So 2 and 4 years. The team was good under Dan Reeves in year 1 in 93. Jim Fossil's first year made the playoffs. I know it was special. Now you're starting to work for the organization, with the organization. What was that transition like, going from son of owner, fan of team, to now having to learn the business at the hands of a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, it was, it was a great experience for me, being able to work side by side with my father for so many years, from really 1991 until he passed in 2005. That was a great experience for me. I learned a lot from him, mostly, how to treat people, not only people that worked in the organization, but players and fans. Those were lessons that he tried to impart to me, and he was mostly successful, I think, in doing so. But that to me was an invaluable experience, and just how you deal with people on a daily basis.
And for the first time in family history, there was a non-Mara as part owner. When Mr. Tisch bought half of the franchise in 1991, he and your dad came from different worlds, but they seemed to find a way to make it work, didn't they?
They really did. Yeah, I think there was a mutual respect there. I mean, Bob was such a successful businessman outside of football, and knew what he didn't know in terms of how you build a football team and how the football business works. But he learned pretty quickly, and he was great to work with, and he made us a much more professional business organization when he came in. And unfortunately, he passed before we were able to win those Super Bowls after the 7 and 11 seasons.
2000, he was there for that, and so was your father. Arguably the greatest game ever played in Giant Stadium history. The NFC Championship game, 41-0 against a Vikings team that was a powerhouse and expected to come in and win.
Yeah, they were considered, the best offense in the NFL for many, many years, and for us to shut them out and score 41 points, that was a great game for us. And I remember walking down to the field with my father before the game ended, which was very unusual. I mean, you never saw him do that. You never see me do that. And being able to stand with him in the end zone and with my mother during the final moments of that game was really a great experience for me.
John, Super Bowl 42, Super Bowl 46, Tom Coughlin now wins 2 in 4 years. Eli Manning, obviously a central figure in all this, and the defense. Now, as you are the man in charge, how important was it for you? What does it mean to you to be the guy that gets handed that Lombardi trophy?
Yeah, that was something that I have to admit, I dreamed about all my life, being in that position. To be standing on that platform and be handed that trophy was such I still get chills thinking about it. Being able to do it again 4 years later was really an unreal experience for me. But one story about the first one in 2007, we win the game, and my brothers and I go literally running from the booth that we watched the game in to get to the field, because I didn't want to miss anything. And I got down there and I realized, man, I left my mother up there. So she was still in the suite. But so I go up on the platform and they're starting the ceremony, and then I see her walking up the stairs, and let's just say she was not very happy with me. I didn't make that mistake in 2011. I'll tell you that.
And I'm sure she reminded you of it a few times.
Yes, she did.
John, just in wrapping up here, so much energy leading into 100 seasons. The season ticket holders receiving this really incredible gift with the replica rings, the coffee table book, the celebration. What do you want to say to the fans? Because we even had at the Legends Night, we had a fan that's been there for all 99 previous seasons. The Mara family's feelings toward the fans.
Yeah, I say this all the time, and it just because it's so important to me. I really appreciate the loyalty that our fans have shown over the years. I mean, I've said this many times, there's no more loyal fan base than the Giant fans. I mean, they've stayed with us through thick and thin, through some pretty tough years, through some pretty great years. And they're not always happy, but they always come back. And they're always supportive, and their loyalty to me is unmatched.
John, we appreciate a couple minutes. Congratulations on 100 seasons.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
May it be a successful one. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Papa's Perspective, brought to you by Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store and a mattress partner of the New York Giants.